my mission here is to help others feel good about themselves, take care of themselves, feel
Right,
like the work they put into themselves is an act of self-love.
right.
Often we think that self-care is, oh, throwing on a bubble bath, go get those bath bombs and I don't know, candles on and just sulking and disassociating. But a lot of the time, self-care is doing the hard work for ourselves to better ourselves, even if
Yeah.
we don't want to do it.
I'm Joey Youngjan Liu, educator, researcher, storyteller, and coach. And this is Everyone Needs a Story for the Campfire. This podcast brings you impactful stories each week, drawn from my guests' lived experiences. You will gain inspiration, insight, new perspectives, and hopefully a sense of familiarity and belonging as we explore the themes that make us all at once uniquely individual, yet collectively human. This week, I'm joined at the campfire by Jen Liwanag, certified professional trainer, certified nutrition coach, and now pre- and post-natal coach. Today, Jen will be sharing her story of breaking societal and cultural expectations of her to follow her own path into coaching and entrepreneurship. In another story, Jen generously shares with us her journey into motherhood, including her experience with pregnancy loss, navigating grief, and redefining her identity after the birth of her daughter. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Everybody Needs a Story for the Campfire. I'm so excited to bring you this next episode with this amazing guest, Jen Liwanag, who happens to be another cousin of mine, related through my husband, Michael, part of the big, beautiful Bonak family. I am just so blessed to have you here at the campfire to share your beautiful stories and insights with my audience. Welcome, Jen.
Thank you for having me.
You are so welcome. Thank you for staying up late for us this episode. Before we get to your stories, I just want to share a quick story about how we connected and how beautiful it has been to have you in my life, Jen. Obviously you're cousins, but you were one of the first
Yes.
Bonak cousins that I actually got to meet in person. And we met when my son Kamali was only 4 months old. We made the trek out to your
Yeah.
part of the woods, which is in Ontario, Canada. And we connected on so many things. It was like we were Insta friends because you and your partner Adam also love to be adventurers, love the outdoors. We went hiking in the snow that first trip. And then you've just been such a creative person, such a fearless person, really like just take life by the horns and write life, your story, the way that you want to live it. I just remember being so impressed with you that even as young as you were when we first met, you were just doing life on your own terms, super creative, sort of like a serial entrepreneur, which we'll hear lots more
Try.
about. You also played a really important role when I was getting yoga certified in 2018, and I came and stayed with your
Yeah.
family. You, your sister, and your mom were part of that first group. I was sort of earning my stripes and learning how to teach Kundalini yoga. You guys were like a practice class for me. And then I watched you with your own health and fitness
Yeah.
journey and holistic journey, and just take it to another level. I'm so impressed by everything that you've done. You mean so much to me, and I'm so grateful to have you here today.
Thank you for having me. I'm so grateful to have you in my life. Like, I feel like we've
Yes.
known each other like forever, even though
Yeah.
we've only met a couple years, right?
Yes, exactly. Well, a couple years. It's been it's flown by. What is it?
Like
Were we
10
like
years
seven?
almost.
Yeah. You're right.
Yeah.
I don't know where the time goes. And you'll definitely share some stories that will bring us through sort of some of those last 10 years of your life, or if not more. And I can't wait to hear your stories that you have for us today, because I think that there's so much we can learn from you. Are you ready to get started with your first story?
Absolutely.
I cannot wait to get into your stories today. I'm going to intro the first one and then hand over the mic to you, okay? So you are bringing a story to the campfire that really centers on this idea of self-love and how that became a driving factor for your transition and transformation in your life, both in your personal identity as well as what you did for work and how you serve others.
Absolutely.
Okay, if you're
So,
ready, take it away.
all right. Start off, I think it's important to let everyone know that self-love is so important to me because it's a driving factor that encourages us to take care of ourselves. When we take care of ourselves, we can begin to make positive changes within our lives. For me,
Absolutely.
when I was in university, I really let myself go. I focused so much on trying to be a people pleaser. I focused so much on trying to get a degree that I wasn't excited to have. So I really let my health go. It wasn't until I turned 24 when I realized I had a lot of health issues. I
Mm.
had fatty liver disease, high cholesterol, high blood pressure, and I was gaining weight very quickly in a way that was unhealthy for my body, where I was feeling achy knees, I was feeling back pain, I was short of breath all the time, and it just wasn't healthy for me. But I didn't notice at the time that it was such an issue because I was putting my self care and my self love on the back burner. When I got to the age of 24, I was like, this is enough. I cannot live the rest of my life like this. And so I decided from this day on, I need to make a transition within my life. I need to focus on self love and draw into myself so that
Mm.
I can take care of myself. Where am
Yeah.
I going to be when I'm 30, when I'm 40? Will I even make it to
Mm.
um, the older years within my life if I keep living life this way? And
Right.
because of that, I signed up for a gym membership and I booked a trip to Bali just for motivation. And because
Yes.
of that, I showed up every single day in the gym to just start working on myself. It wasn't about looking a certain way, it wasn't about um, doing it for other people. For once, this was something that I
Right.
had to do for myself, especially.
Yes.
I'll get into my next story when it comes to that transition within going from university and studying pre-law to becoming an entrepreneur. You're going to notice I did a lot of things within my life to people please and make
Mm.
sure that I was showing up for everyone else, what everyone else
Mm.
expected of me, right?
Wow.
So in that journey, I ended up learning about nutrition. I ended up falling in love with cooking. I've been cooking almost all my life, but it wasn't until this area of my life, this era, if you will, where I
Yeah.
really started seeing cooking and taking the time to learn new recipes as a sense of self care. The gym became self care to me. It wasn't
Wow.
about showing up just to work out anymore. It was,
Mm.
I need to do this to start my day off well and make the rest of my day feel great, make the rest of my week feel great. And in that, self love really did stream through me.
Yes. Wow.
And because I started taking care of myself, a lot of people started noticing online because I've shared everything about my life and my fitness journey online. I actually started a page to share my journey, and because of
Right.
that, I started growing traction. I think at that time I had almost 150 followers by the end of my journey in October when my trip was coming. So it was just
Yes.
baby growing goddess at that point.
Yes.
Yes. And so actually, while I was in Bali, Adam encouraged me. He's like, "You really love what you've been doing on this journey. We've been doing this for 8 months. You show up every day.
Mm.
You have been learning to cook. You've been enjoying your workouts. And people are starting to notice. People are starting to ask questions about how they can do it as well." And
Yes.
while we were in Bali, I got an email and it was an invitation to, it was like one of those subscription emails, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
For a company called Precision Nutrition. And they were opening up their class for the year. So they only open up once a year.
Yeah. Mm.
And I was like, this is my sign from the universe.
Yes.
Maybe I should sign up. It wasn't originally to help people, it's actually to help myself so that I could
Right.
make better changes. Yeah.
Yes.
So I was like, maybe I should actually get to know like nutrition in the right way. Obviously, at that
Mhm.
point I lost 55 pounds. I went to the doctor and I didn't have fatty liver disease anymore. I didn't have high
Wow.
cholesterol and high blood pressure, all from just showing up little by little every day, right? And
Yes.
I'm sure stress played a role in that as well. And when I was taking care of myself, stress started to decrease.
Right.
And because of that, my health started to improve. And I was like, if I'm going to continue to do this and I want to continue to show up for myself and keep progressing within my journey, I probably should figure out how to actually fuel myself. I can cook, but I'm not really understanding the dynamics of nutrition. So I
Right.
signed up for the course. Interestingly enough, I thought it was just like a nutrition course teaching you like macronutrients and calories and like, you know, but it ended up being a course about coaching people who are
Mm,
learning nutrition. So I learned a lot of skills like intuitive eating skills, how to time yourself so that you're eating slower, so that you're mindfully eating. And
yeah.
I was sharing those tips on the internet. I was like, oh, this is what I'm doing today to eat a little bit slower today so I can be more mindful of my hunger and satiety cues. Oh, this is me showing up in the gym today. I'm doing my 5 minute actions so that I didn't want to show up today, but here I am. And a lot of people start asking questions. They're like, how can I do this too? Like, I've seen
Right.
big changes within your journey. How can I do this too? And so I was like, I got the certification following in the following year. So in February of that year, I was like, maybe I could start helping a couple people. I started giving tips here and there, and then it ended up a business idea. I
Right.
was transitioning at that time anyway into I was transitioning anyway from being in university to college, and I'll draw back to that a little
Right.
bit. So drawing back to when I was in university and college, I was in pre-law, which a lot of people don't know unless you know me personally within the family. I was studying legal studies and hoping to go into law school all of my life, actually. Anybody
Mm,
who is really close family knows my parents kind of parade around saying, my daughter is going to become a lawyer. At the age of 4, my mom tells this story all the time about how whenever people would ask me when I was 4 years old what I wanted to be when I grow up, I would say, "Oh, I want to be a lawyer so I could use the mallet like Judge Judy and be like, order, order, order in the court." And so that became my personality, my persona,
um,
if you will.
mm, for sure.
Yeah. And I did really well in law courses in high school. So when applying for university and college, I was like, this is it. This is my future. And I liked
Mhm.
it at the beginning, but it wasn't until I got into my second year where I found myself not wanting to show up for classes as much because I wasn't
Mm,
as passionate about it. However, I felt a lot of pressure, not only from family, obviously, because they expected me to graduate here. You feel a lot of guilt, I guess, if you are a second generation immigrant. Um,
right.
your parents come to another country, they're trying to get you a better life.
Yes.
And the one thing they want to see is you get that education, get that paper, and then get a really great job, right?
Right.
Um, that being said, law was not for me. I didn't feel very passionate about that. I also felt a lot of shame because I had a very small program. There's only 30 of us in the graduating years,
Mm,
the fourth year, and everyone knows, right? Like you see the same people in every
mm,
single one of your classes. So dropping out would be, oh, you're not good enough, you're not
wow.
smart enough, you don't
Yeah.
belong here. Those are the thoughts that would constantly braid my mind in whenever I considered dropping out.
Right.
However, I think the universe has a funny way of working itself, and it was
Mm,
giving me tips that, hey, this isn't the place for you to be in second year, in third year, but I kept resisting it. And I think that's the funny thing about transition. Often you get these hints here and there where it's telling you, hey, I'm trying to redirect you, but you're
mm,
so focused on this is the prize, this is the destination I need to get to, that we don't listen to those signals.
yeah.
And
Yeah.
unfortunately for me, right? Unfortunately
Yes,
for me,
absolutely.
I wasn't listening. And I ended up going through a really bad mental health break within my life.
Mm,
I ended up in the crisis center of my hospital,
mm,
unfortunately. And I think that was the defining factor. I was like, wow, I cannot be in this program. I cannot be in this. I can't do law for the rest of my life. I need to figure something else out. At the same time, I was already kind of an entrepreneur. I was blogging. I started
yeah.
blogging in 2014, like officially blogging. I've always been on the internet in some degree,
Yeah.
sharing my personal life, like as early
Yes.
as probably like 2009 on Tumblr, if anyone knows what
Yeah.
Tumblr is.
Yes.
Yes. I was one of those Tumblr pages that told the story of my life. And I'm sure it's on there
Yes.
somewhere still. I don't know the login, but I'm sure it's on there
Right,
somewhere.
right, right.
But
On the internet, yeah.
yeah, right? Somewhere on there. But starting in like 2000, I want to say 2015, I started officially blogging 2014, 2015. And I was already making a little bit of money off of it. Like I was working with a couple agencies to do brand deals here and there. So, and I was working locally with a couple companies here and there. So it was kind of like a spark in my mind where I was like, self-employment is an option.
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
really enjoy being on my own, working for myself, and I really like being like taking the reins of my life.
Right.
That's kind of really important for me. Doing things my way and kind of learning and navigating how that looks within general society and how I can support society, or help my community
Yes.
in my way,
Right,
if that makes
right.
sense.
So important.
And
Right.
that was not coming for me in law. But
Right.
through blogging, I was able to share products. I was able to share places for people to visit. And I kind of found joy in like writing and taking photos. And I guess that's where the transition kind of comes in within my
Yes.
life, where I tried a lot of things actually. And I think within transition, it's not A to B destination that we always
Right.
think it is.
Yes. Absolutely.
Often it's you take detours. I like
Yes.
to say, well, you know how everyone's like, oh, it's a journey. It is. You
Yeah,
take a couple
it is.
detours here, you stop and see the view here, see the view there, and
Yes.
it gets you to where you're looking. Yeah, I
Yes.
started blogging. I was an Etsy store seller for a little bit.
Right.
I had
Yes.
a dog accessory brand for a little
Yes.
bit. My dog was an influencer for a little bit, and he had brand deals and everything, was making
Yes,
money.
I
But
remember. Yeah.
right, yeah.
Yes,
But
so
it wasn't
cute.
until I went through that journey of my personal self-care journey, personal self-love journey, taking care of myself, that I realized my mission here is to help others feel good about themselves, take care of themselves, feel
Right.
like the work they put into themselves is an act of self-love.
Right.
Often we think that self-care is, oh, throwing on a bubble bath, go get those bath bombs and I don't know, candles on and just soaking and disassociating. But a lot of the time, self-care is doing the hard work for ourselves to better ourselves, even if
Yeah.
we don't want to do it. In
Yes.
that sense, with my transition journey, I had to have self-love for myself and say, this is enough. I can't
Yes.
live this way. I can't study in this program anymore. And I need to renavigate my life in a direction that feels more authentic to myself so that I can
Yeah.
start feeling that self-love even more.
Absolutely. Wow. What a powerful story. And I think that this story is so illuminating for many people who have ever, I mean, you bring so many strands together. So I feel like it could be so helpful for people who have ever just felt like, the path that they're on wasn't the right fit. It wasn't authentic for them. And like, but they feel stuck on it. Like there's that sort of thread in your story. There's that thread of like taking care of everybody else or thinking you're taking care of everybody else, but putting yourself last. So really, it's almost like impossible to take care of anything when you're just wearing yourself to the bone.
Mm-hmm.
And then this thread of discovering your purpose, your mission, and helping others, but only once you got to that point of self-love, true self-love, and true self-care, that then like brings everything together. Like, this is what I was always meant to do. So I wanted to like touch back on a couple of the points that I heard. One,
Okay.
you were talking about this moment in your story where you were in law school, and that had been sort of the culmination of like a lifetime of persona making or
Yeah.
identity making, both from yourself and from your family. I think that's important to acknowledge because
Yeah.
for sure, I think
Yeah.
anybody from like an immigrant family or Asian, certain cultures where it's like, it's sort
Yeah.
of, I don't want to say it's just stereotypical. It's very common that we as children take on this sense
Yep.
of responsibility, that especially when your family moved from somewhere else to say like, I want to give your kids a better life, you don't want to waste that opportunity, and you take
Absolutely.
on this identity. And you got to a point in your program, you mentioned, where you already knew that it wasn't right for you, but
Yes.
you felt like you couldn't step away. And then there was this
Yeah.
moment where you were in the hospital and it was sort of no longer an option. And I just thought about how when you really stay open in your heart, and those thoughts, you said those thoughts were bombarding, when you stay open to your heart, to listen to your soul's purpose, even when you can't take action yet by yourself, right? When you stay open, I feel like the universe conspires to make the opportunity or like give you that pivot point where it's no longer an option. And in the moment, I wonder
Yeah.
how it felt for you, because you're obviously like in the hospital with suffering this huge breakdown. Like it
Yeah.
seems like such an overwhelming negative experience. Were you able to see it in that time, or like shortly after or sometime after, that this was like an opportunity or a door for you to like start a better version of your life?
It absolutely was. Like in that moment, I was like, I need to figure something else out. Right before that, and I didn't mention this in my story, right before that, the reason I was having a mental breakdown, it was because it was exam season. I was sitting in
Mm,
the library and I was opening up my laptop, getting ready to study, and I just started sobbing because this was my last semester before graduating. I actually didn't end up graduating at all because I
mhm.
called. I just had one semester left to finish. But I was sitting there in front of my laptop thinking about, how am I going to do this? How am I going to live the rest of my life? I'm finishing this program, and then what? What am I going to do with the
Oh,
rest of my life? And so I
oh
just
my
started
God.
sobbing. And in that moment, I was like, what am I going to do? I went upstairs because I worked at the university as well. My whole life was the university. So that made it even more
Wow.
difficult. So I went upstairs and my boss saw me sobbing in the washroom, and I told her everything that was going on. She said, go to the hospital, go see your doctor, and she probably can give you some help with mental health because there's nothing else that I could do. Like I was having a mental breakdown. Like I
Right.
was like insolvable. I
Wow.
knew I knew that was it. This is not the place for me to. I didn't even enroll for the next semester because I knew I did not want to be back here.
Mm. It's almost like you had a physical aversion to like living a life that was not
Yeah.
authentic to your true soul's purpose,
Yes.
right? So
Yeah.
did it feel like a relief when you got to the hospital and you knew like I don't have to go back anymore? Like this is it? Or what did it feel like in the moment?
Not in the hospital, probably just wanted to get affirmation that I wasn't going through something that wasn't unreasonable. Because
Mhm.
at face value, I guess the idea of sitting in the library and sobbing for no reason
Mhm.
doesn't really make sense to a lot of people unless you hear what's going on internally, right? What's going on
Mhm.
in your mind. And I think getting that affirmation from the doctor, knowing I am going through a really hard time, really traumatic time right now, I'm trying to process through all this stuff, really
Mhm.
helped me feel better. Almost kind of like a weight was lifted off of my shoulders. It's not all in my head. I
Mhm.
actually need to pivot, right?
Yes. Yeah. Wow. Thank you for surfacing that, because that even that thought of saying like in the hospital, I was looking for affirmation that I'm not making all of this up, in other words, right? Or that
Yes.
this isn't unreasonable. I think that's so relatable. And for those of us who come from family backgrounds or cultures where mental health isn't, as
Mm-hmm.
open of a conversation, or we don't
Prominent. Yeah.
see as many examples growing up of mental health care like being played out on a daily basis, where someone's really
Yeah.
affirming their feelings and checking in with their body and their mind and seeing like how I'm doing. Like when that isn't modeled to us growing up, when we become young
Yeah.
adults and we're trying to navigate all this ourselves, like you just painted a picture I think is so relatable to so many people, where even just taking those first few steps to receiving
Yeah.
care and support even in that moment of crisis, but then extending into all those other daily practices that we do to care for ourselves.
Yeah.
It's so hard to even validate ourselves that we're doing the right thing at the beginning. So thank you for sharing that. And
Absolutely.
it can be very vulnerable, but I think it's really helpful for anyone listening who feels like, I think we tell ourselves a lot, like, I'll be fine. I just got to get through this. I just got to get through this, right? We
Yeah.
kind of push down those feelings and try to forge forward, which is admirable, right? It's admirable to try to be
Yeah.
strong and get stuff done. And there's also a better way, right? There's a better way to receive support and do
Absolutely.
things in a way that's healthy for us. So thank you for sharing that. I wanted to touch on one other point too that I found was really insightful. You spoke about this sort of call from the universe when you're in Bali. So you booked this trip. That was your motivating factor. You were laser focused sort of
Yeah.
on like, my goals isn't for anybody else about how I look or whatever, but I just want to get healthy. And you set up this external like moment in time, like when I get to Bali, I will have reached this point in my journey. And then there in
Yes.
Bali, you get an email that
Yeah.
was just so like divinely appointed in the timing, and
Yeah.
you entered a program, but you spoke to the motivation about like saying yes to it was to not necessarily make it your business or to help other people at
Yeah.
that moment. It was to
Yeah.
further your own learning. And I resonate with that so much, because I think that, I mean, even for me, when I signed up for the year-long Kundalini teacher training program, I
Yeah.
was at a similar point
Yeah.
of breakdown. Like, I don't know how to survive this transition into marriage and motherhood.
Yeah.
My son was, not even 1 year old yet. And I was like, okay, for me, signing up for
Yeah.
the training program was like, I need to integrate these tools as fully as possible. And I don't know
Yeah.
any other way than to go all into this like certification program.
Yeah.
So I love that you brought that up, because I think that's also super relatable, that even if there's not like no other outcome from the program except for you get the transformation, it's worthy,
Yeah.
right? But at what point, and
100%.
you spoke on it a little bit when you said you started posting about it and people were
Yes.
asking you, was there ever a moment while you were still in the training program where you started to envision that this could be a career, or did that come later, like when you were sharing your journey online?
I did. So I started sharing my journey from the very beginning of my fitness journey. And obviously, a lot of people were asking questions and they're like, oh, how do I do this? How do I do that? Because I shared that I signed up for this program. I put it in, I don't know if I still have the original post in my archives, but I put it on my stories and I'm like, signed up for this, for the precision nutrition. And a lot of people started asking me questions because they're like, oh, I'm seeing that you're doing this balanced plate. Oh, how does that work? How can I apply that to my fitness journey? Because a lot of people that followed me were on their fitness journeys as well, right?
Right.
And so the more people started asking me, I was like, well, I have value that I can share, and I have my own point of view to it and my own experiences to it. Pairing those together really is different. And I think a lot of people could take value from that if I turn that into a business, right?
Mm,
Especially since, again, I was going through that transition of figuring out entrepreneurship and going through my own fitness journey. It was kind of like the crossroad just blended
yeah.
together. It was
Yeah.
seamless. But I don't
Wow.
think I started really thinking about it until probably like the end of that year. You know, when you get to the end of like a year and you think about your goals for the year, I was
Right.
almost done the program already. So I was like, what are my goals this year after I finish this? Right.
Wow.
And I think that's where it sparked, this makes sense.
Got it. Was there, you mentioned that it was seamless, that the sort of two parts of your path came together. Was there any resistance that you experienced when it came to actually fully
Um,
launching the business? Did you have any fears or reservations about it?
I didn't feel qualified. I think I'm really
Mm,
good at downplaying my abilities, well, at least
wow.
before. And in my head, I was like, this is just one program. There's
Mm,
nothing super special about me in comparison to all these other people going through crazy transformations. Like some people are going through like 100-pound weight losses or lifting 500 pounds or doing all these big things. With social media, everyone's so focused on the big, the crazy, oh, the
mhm.
new workout exercise or whatever. And I think
Right.
my journey felt so small in comparison to
Mhm.
that. So I wasn't
Oh my
sure
gosh.
if that was even something someone was looking for. You know,
Wow.
I didn't think I wasn't interesting enough, or what I didn't know what would make me look different in comparison to all the
Mm,
other trainers on the internet, all the other
right.
nutrition coaches on the internet.
Oh my
But
gosh.
I think that's something a lot of entrepreneurs feel when they start
So
their business.
relatable. So relatable. How did you move through that? Because obviously you're several years in business now and serving your community and doing amazing. So how did
Yeah,
you move through those feelings that I have no doubt everyone who's ever embarked on this journey of entrepreneurship
yeah,
or even just service, right?
yeah,
Just service of
yeah,
others, like we all struggle with that. So how did you move through that block?
absolutely. There's actually a unit in the program that was talking about our unique stories. Funny enough, it was
Yes.
talking about how, yeah, it was talking about how um, the information, the science is that, right? But what we bring to the table is our own personal experiences, and those put a different take on the
Mm-hmm.
science. It applies it in a different way. So somebody who would be looking to share nutrition for people who are trying to lose a lot of weight, their story would be extremely different than somebody who is going into sharing nutrition for competitive bodybuilders, for example. Or like for me right now, I'm working with pre and postnatal mothers,
Mm-hmm.
applying that and how can we fit meals in when the day feels chaotic
Mm-hmm.
overall. That story is so different, even though the science is exactly the same across the board. And when I put it in that perspective, I was like, I do have a story to tell, and my journey
Yes.
is different. My story is not the same as this person on the internet, this person on the
Wow.
internet, this person on the internet. My story is my story, and I can hone
Mm-hmm.
into that to show others who want to feel the same way as I felt on my journey, how they can
Yes.
achieve it too.
Amazing. It's like I'm sitting here listening to you and I'm laughing kind of a little bit because this is my whole work. Like I help people unlock their stories and see the value in your unique stories. And
Yeah.
it doesn't matter how many times I hear this experience or however many people I work with, like I'm always still a little bit surprised at how universal this experience
Yeah.
is of doubting our stories and then how foundational like seeing the uniqueness and the value in your story becomes to
Yeah.
everything that you do after that. I'm always surprised when I hear
Yeah.
somebody else say it back to me and I'm like, that's it. That's everything right there. That's it. And I don't like, maybe there's a handful of people or however many people out there who don't need to do their story work and don't need to dig into their like, unique lived experiences and how that shapes their unique contributions to the community that needs them. Maybe there's some people who just get out there without thinking twice about it and do it. But overwhelmingly, I find like it's like sort of a non-negotiable piece of our journey is that we
Yeah.
really see ourselves in the service that we put to others and that
Yeah.
we have to slay those sort of giants of comparisоnism and perfectionism and self-doubt in order to really fully embody all those transformations. And as we transition into the second story, I think it's going to become even more clear because you mentioned in that last bit that you now are serving mothers, right? And that you
Yeah.
all the stories and lived experiences up to there have now built, right, one to another,
Yeah.
connected to another, and now you had this other piece of your story, this other chapter of your
Yeah.
story unfold and transitioning to motherhood, and
Yeah.
now that's coming along with you into how you serve others. So this is a great
Yeah.
segue if you feel ready to transition into
Yeah.
your second story, where you really will surface a lot more this theme of transition and some of the things that
Yes.
happened to you in your life and how you navigated that to go through the transition and become who you are right now.
Yeah. Yeah, so recently I've become a new mother. I am 6 months postpartum, and
Yay.
this journey, thank you. This journey of becoming a mom was
Congratulations.
not, thank you. This journey of becoming a mother was not what I expected in regards to lifestyle. A lot of people tell you that you either lose your identity within motherhood or you
Mm,
kind of blend your life with parenthood and your
mm,
life was before and you kind of just make your kids fit, right? And so I was
mm,
trying to figure out what that looked like for me. I didn't want to lose my identity within motherhood, but I was noticing that as I was trying to embrace this whole new journey, especially since I experienced pregnancy after loss. So prior to this pregnancy, trigger warning, I had a miscarriage prior. Because of that, I think I was holding on so much to the
right.
idea of motherhood. This is my whole identity. I really want to embrace every single moment of it.
Mm,
That I really did start losing who I was. I questioned whether or not I wanted to stay an entrepreneur during this time.
mm,
Yeah, I questioned if I wanted to become a stay-at-home mom instead.
mm.
One of the things I was questioning was, who am I outside of being a mom? And especially since now my daughter is 6 months old, she's not as dependent as obviously a newborn who is like on your hip
Yes.
24/7 or in your arms 24/7.
Yes.
She has longer wake windows. She's hanging out by herself every now and then. I'm like, what do I do with my time? What was I doing before I became a mom? Like,
Mm,
what do I do in this free time other than like clean and do laundry? And I had a sit down chat with my husband, and I was like, what did I do before becoming a mom other than work out? Because I bring my daughter to the gym, right? She works out with
Yes.
me. So it's not like, oh, I can escape and that's my thing. What
Yeah.
are my hobbies outside of being a mom? Right. And so I really had to sit down and think and reevaluate, what does life look like for me now
Mm,
that I have that time now? And how can I, if I'm going to stay within entrepreneurship, how can I make that fit within my life? Because obviously
right.
life looks very different now. Time frames are different now. I don't have all the time in the world to take on as many
Yes.
clients as I want. And it really was a stressful time, me trying to figure out, what does the future of growing goddess coaching look like for me? Right now, what that looks like, obviously, is going part time so that I have more time to be a mom. But it really gave me a perspective of what other moms go through. Obviously, I took two
Mm,
courses that tell me about how to train moms and how to train within the pregnancy portion and the postpartum portion of your program, or within your coaching program. However, I didn't really understand what that looked like until I became a mom and was able to apply
mm-hmm.
that within client programs. A lot of the time,
Okay.
the habits people tell moms are, oh, find time in between, or meal prep. But what does that look like when you're a mom?
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Yes.
the same when I was pre-pregnancy. My meal prep does not look the same then, and it does not look the same now, because I don't have
Yeah.
the same time. I don't have the same motivation. I don't have the same goals. Even my goals have changed within health and fitness. And because of that, it's a whole new journey of trying to rediscover myself.
Right.
And yeah.
So if I'm hearing correctly, you had
Yes,
started the motherhood coaching programs then before you actually became a
before.
mother. Speak to
Yes,
that motivation. Why did you get into that direction before becoming a mom? Was it because
because
you
I wanted to be
anticipated?
a mom. Yeah.
Okay, interesting.
Because
Okay.
I knew I was going to, I was getting married. I knew, because me and Adam have been together for, at that time, when I enrolled in the program, we've been together for 9 years already. We were already engaged. And my thought process was, okay, well, we're going to get married. We're obviously going to want to have kids soon. And
Yeah.
I wanted to stay training through pregnancy. A lot of the time, I think a lot of people tell you you shouldn't train through pregnancy. However, I wanted to train through pregnancy because I
Mm-hmm.
wanted to maintain a healthy lifestyle through that period. I wanted to know how to nourish myself during that period
Yes.
so that I could have a healthy pregnancy. I wanted to stay active so that I didn't have aches and pains during pregnancy. And then following postpartum, I wanted to be able to get my strength back, keep up with my daughter as she starts moving. Now she's crawling. And I
Mm-hmm.
wanted to have that energy so that as she continues to grow, I'd be able to keep up.
Mm-hmm.
However, because of that, I ended up taking the program. I ended up taking two. I took a group fitness class first, like took a group fitness class certification first, and then I took a more comprehensive program after. And with
Mm-hmm.
the intention of, I'm probably going to be training myself during this period.
Okay.
Yes. And then it
Was
just
there
ended.
also a need that you found like moms struggling? Did you have clients that were asking for this as
I
well
did.
in terms of
I
yeah,
did.
yeah, yeah.
Actually, at the same time I was pregnant, I had three clients who were also pregnant. So
Wow.
So it ended up perfect. We ended up all being pregnant together. We did this journey together.
Wow.
And then
Yes.
I even did a program when I started my fitness journey. Joey, you were one of my first one of my first beta
I was
clients.
thinking when I was telling my
Yes,
intro story, I finished and I was like, wait, I forgot that part. That was so pivotal. I was one of your first beta clients and it was amazing to be a part of your program in those early days.
yeah, you were actually my second mom that I worked with at the time, and that's part of what sparked the idea of wanting to become a pre and postnatal coach, because
Oh, wow.
not only for you, but other, I had like three other clients all together before I certified myself. I realized
Hmm.
I do not understand health and fitness in the lens of a mom because I haven't become a mom yet. But I
Mm,
want to understand
wow.
how I can help other moms better. I can't give
Mm,
generic information and give generic advice because it
mm,
doesn't apply to everyone, right? And it
right.
wasn't until I took that program and then started applying it to my life where I was like, this is the ticket. This is what I was
Mhm.
missing for myself and for all. And I wish I had that education prior, because I would have been able to serve you and my other clients better. But it helped me motivate myself to take a program and help
Mm,
myself and help my other three clients at the same time better.
yeah. I mean, that goes again to show that how our lived experiences
Yeah.
unfold only support, right, and enhance how
Yeah.
we're able to serve others and show up in spaces for others. So that's super powerful. If you don't mind, I'd love to dig in a little bit deeper to this piece that I think, on the one hand, it's sensitive, but I think that if we can illuminate it, it would be really helpful to so many. So I wanted to dig a little bit deeper into, you mentioned that one aspect of this transition story involved, obviously you're talking about how you planned on becoming a mother. You went like very proactively went and got the certifications even before becoming a mother so that you could serve your clients who are also going to be embarking or were on that journey to motherhood as well. But then you touched on this piece, and I know it's sensitive, so I hope it's okay that,
Yeah.
with you that we go there. You gave
Absolutely.
me permission before the conversation, so I just want to make my audience aware of that. But this sensitive piece, which unfortunately is also a part of so many people's stories of loss,
Yeah.
and you suffered a miscarriage but prior to having your
Yeah.
daughter today. And you said that that played a role in your transition into motherhood when you did have your daughter. And it showed up not only in how you started to identify yourself as a mother with your daughter, but also then how you're showing up in your business and serving other mothers, right? You said you kind of went to one extreme of making that your entire identity. Do you mind speaking a little bit more to how you went through that journey?
So my husband and I found out that we were pregnant around December, January. Actually, it's the beginning of the new year, and we were so excited because we were getting married in February, and we were planning this whole thing where we were going to surprise our family at our wedding. We eloped. So what we planned on doing was we put these little gift boxes together announcing that we were pregnant and sent them to our parents while we were in Alberta getting eloped. And it was like this whole thing that we were so excited about. It was a secret that was really hard to keep. Anybody that knows me knows that I have a hard time keeping secrets because, again, I'm very transparent with my life. On the internet and in real life. So it was something that was really, really difficult for me to keep a secret. And I was just so excited. It was 9 years, 10 years in the making. And I think everyone in the back of their mind is thinking, when are they going to have kids? When's this next chapter of their lives, including us? So
Right.
we went to Alberta to get married, and we announced to our families that night that we were pregnant, and everyone was so excited because, again, it's that next chapter of our lives. Unfortunately, going into our ultrasound, following 3 days later, we found out that our baby no longer had a heartbeat. And because of that, that was actually really traumatic because we were going through this. It was a process of we just had something really great happen in our lives, and now we're having
Yeah.
something really horrible happening in our lives
Yeah.
simultaneously at the same time. But on
Wow.
top of that, we're feeling really I was feeling a lot of shame because we just told everyone, "Oh my god, we're pregnant now. Everyone's so excited. Everyone was looking
Mm-hmm.
forward to this." And then 3 days later, we've explained to everyone, "Actually, no, we don't have this new member of the family joining us." It was really hard to explain a lot. I was actually feeling a lot of guilt as well because on the internet, a lot of people say, "Oh, don't tell anyone until you're 12 weeks." So we waited until the 12-week period, and at the same
Mm.
time, there was that didn't save us. That didn't save our
Yeah.
situation. That didn't save our
Wow.
baby. And
Wow.
I shared a little bit of it online, but a lot of the grieving process was offline. I
Right.
took, for the first time in a long time, I took a 2 week period off of posting on social media just because I didn't know what to post about, right?
Yeah.
What do you post during that
Understandably.
period? Do you just continue posting your fitness tips and your workouts when you're not even
Mm.
going through the motions of healthy living during that time? You're
Mm.
just trying to
Mm.
grieve and trying to process what happened. Uh,
Yeah.
it wasn't until 2 weeks later I decided to share on the internet, and it was something that I was really surprised by actually, because a lot of people came out with their stories too, which
Mm.
surprised me because a lot of people, it's kind of this thing that's really taboo and really hush hush. Nobody really talks about. So it was
Mm-hmm.
really affirming to know that my community, who has been following me for so long, understood where I was. And if they didn't understand where I was, they could understand grief in some sense,
Mm-hmm.
to hold space for me and understand why I was gone for so long.
Mm-hmm.
But that period of grieving offline was a lot of lying in my bed crying. And I actually bought this book called The Worst Girl Gang Ever, which is basically a book about processing miscarriage and pregnancy loss. I
Mm-hmm.
worked through that for 2 days and kind of sat and sulked and tried to
Mm-hmm.
understand why. I kept asking myself, why did this happen to me? What did I do wrong? Was it
Mm-hmm.
the training I was doing? Was it the things I was eating? Was it the activities I was doing? Was what was wrong with me? And it kind of
Mm-hmm.
drew back to that whole like insecurity of I don't have control of the situation. I
Yeah.
don't have control over my life, right?
Wow.
When I went through that whole transition of getting my life together, this was another hurdle, just smashed me in the face, and I
Yes.
didn't know
Wow.
how to deal with it and process it. So I guess when I gave birth to my daughter, the only thing I was thinking about was I am so grateful that I
Yeah.
have a healthy baby here
Yes.
earthside with me. I'm so grateful
Right.
that I can hold her, experience these
Mm.
moments with her. I wanted it to be, I think to an extent that was too um too almost orchestrated in my head, to the point where I
Mm.
wanted everything to be perfect. And I
Okay.
wanted to have the perfect birth, which didn't end up happening because so many complications ended up happening. I wanted to have the perfect motherhood journey where, you know how on the internet everyone romanticizes motherhood and
Yeah.
makes it look so beautiful, which it is, but
Yes.
not a lot of people talk about the nitty gritty, stressful mental health side of motherhood.
For
And
sure.
I worked so hard to plan for the perfect motherhood journey and embody the perfect motherhood journey that, again, I think that's where I lost myself. I
Mm.
focused so much on, oh, I lost this baby. And again, I'm trying to honor this baby at the same time that I
Yeah.
lost. So I celebrate their birthday.
Yes.
It's a lot to, I guess it's one of those things where you want to honor this baby and you feel guilty about having a healthy baby, but at the same time you want to embody and enjoy this motherhood journey because you want to feel grateful at the same time.
Mm. Wow.
Does that
I
make
mean,
sense?
there's so many, yes, there's so many complexities to that story. And I'm just so grateful to you for sharing that, because I know it's a sensitive story. And I know that
Yeah.
anyone who's been through it, it's not the easiest story to tell. And you're in a position here where you're able to share it with this audience, with your audience, because you've gone through that process. You've given yourself time to grieve. You've given yourself time to heal. I mean, you spoke to taking this very necessary break from social media, and 2 weeks maybe felt like a long time for your audience, but really, like, it's amazing that you were even able to show back up in 2 weeks. And I think a powerful testimony to the community you had built online, where you felt like it was a space that you can go and be seen and be heard and be supported in. And that's not necessarily the case for everybody, right? Who
Yeah.
hasn't built that community. But I would hope that anyone who's going or has gone through something similar can find the support and can find the
Yeah.
space to go through all that,
Yeah.
because you just named so many paradoxes in that moment of your life, right? You were grieving the loss of your first child. You were welcoming and celebrating the coming of your second child. You were holding on to, like, I don't want to lose this memory and I don't want to not honor this child that I lost, but I want to be fully present for this second child. I want to be moving through this grief, but I don't want to minimize what happened to me. Like, it's so many paradoxes that you just named. And I'm glad that you found that resource, that book. I'd love to drop that link of that book. It was
Yeah.
something that helped you.
I'll send
I'll
you the
drop
link.
it in the, yeah, because it's amazing when we can find the resources to move through these things. But at the same time, even if we do have our hands on some resources, it can feel like while we're going through it in those very early stages, that there's not a playbook. There's not, that there's
Yeah.
just certain moments
100%.
of despair and desperation that we just have to go through. Sometimes it feels all like we're going through them all by ourselves, even if we do have the
Absolutely.
support. And then you connect this to your identity as a mom, not only a
Yeah.
mom, but also a business owner and somebody who shows up as a mom and
Yeah.
to show up to support other people who are on that same journey. And you talk about how you had to like find yourself again, even in all of that. Like you're
Yeah.
holding grief, you're holding this big transition,
Yeah.
you're figuring out who you are, and you're doing all of that all together, right? So
Yeah.
I don't know if you want to speak a little bit more to like some of the practical things that helped you regain a sense of self in that journey.
Yeah. I needed one of the things I think a lot of people need to do is just take the break. If you need the break, take the break. On top of that, what helped me a lot, I went to therapy. It was the first
Mm-hmm.
time I went to therapy in almost 3 to 4 years. I thought this was exactly what I need. I needed somebody to help me not just affirm how I was feeling, but help me process and understand how I was feeling and how to
Mm-hmm.
take how I'm feeling and move it forward. So therapy helped me a lot. Um,
Right.
and I'm really grateful to my clients too because they were able to hold space in for me so that I could process in the way that I need to process. I took, I think, a month off of coaching, and all of my clients were very supportive and very thoughtful about it. A lot of them were like, "Of course,
Mm-hmm.
why would I not let you?" And I think that's part of the journey as well of having a really great community and building the community with the right people. When you when you welcome in the right kind of people and bring in the right kind of people within your community, it's a no-brainer that they know who you are, they know they align with your values, and because of that, they're able to help you hold space as you navigate life itself as well
Yes.
as business.
That's so beautiful and so insightful. And again, like you're just I think testifying of the power of community. And speaking of community, you've really, raised Mayari inside of a community, and your parents play a role in that, and your husband plays a role of that. And so, do you mind sharing a little bit about how they've helped you sort of go on this journey, this transition, and even make space for you to discover who you are as a mom now, but also just as Jen, right?
So, what I noticed was during that time, everything was about motherhood. All my time was geared towards being a mom. I stopped seeing people. I didn't want to hang out with anyone. Um, Adam actually mentioned one time, it's so funny. He's like, you need more mom friends. You needed to start doing things outside of just doing being at home with our daughter. I didn't want to, like, I wasn't doing any hobbies. I didn't hang out with friends. I
Mm,
All I did was work out at the gym with our daughter, and then I would go inside and then do mom things all day. And I think
mm,
it wasn't until she started being a little bit more independent that I
mhm,
realized I had nothing to do in the in between time when she wanted mommy back, you know?
mm,
So it was before it was, oh, it's okay because I'm embracing this moment. I'm a new mom. She just wants mommy all the time anyway.
mhm,
Whether it was nursing, changing her, comforting her. And I was enjoying that moment because again, I went through that loss. So I was like, yes, I will soak it all up all this
mhm,
time. I love this. But it wasn't until she was like, oh, I want to spend time by myself, where she would play
mhm,
independently by herself, or she'd be crawling around the house. I'd be like, what can I do with this time? Where I realized I don't really have anything to do with this time. I don't
mhm,
know who I am now outside
mm,
of mommy, you know?
mm,
And it wasn't until I started exploring other things. I went on a journey where I was like, I'm going to start trying different hobbies. And so I signed up for a Pilates class. I started reading, which I haven't done in a long. I haven't had time to. I started playing video games, and I started exploring what can I do during this time of Mary wants her own time for an
mhm.
hour, 30 minutes. What can I do during this time? She also spends a lot of time with my mom and my dad. They call it TV time. And they get their little bonding moment together where they watch
Aw,
Filipino telenovelas. So during
yes.
that time, I was like, what do I do? Right? I was like, what do I do during this hour and a half that I have to myself? So I started exploring different hobbies, and in doing that, I started realizing I have a lot of fun being myself again outside of being a mom. I started taking, like I mentioned earlier, I started taking a Pilates class with a friend once a week. And we both go without our daughters. And we kind of just, we don't talk
Mm,
about being moms. We kind of talk about being anything other than being a mom, which has been
wow.
really nice. Yeah, me
Yes.
and Adam go on dates to play golf now, which we haven't done
Mm,
since before the pregnancy. And I've kind of just been
hmm.
exploring what can I do outside making my whole identity a mom. Obviously, I love
Yeah.
being a mom. It's my favorite
Yes.
thing in the world. But we
Yes.
lose ourselves sometimes when we make that our whole identity. Who are we
Mhm.
outside of being a mom, right? Sometimes we need to learn to fill ourselves up and pour into ourselves so that we can show up
Mhm.
as moms better. And I think that's something that we don't talk about a lot. I'll actually tell I have a side story actually. So I went viral on the internet, which is a very, very scary thing. For anybody who's
Mm.
not gone viral, but I've had a reel go viral for 7.5 million people to see and about
Wow.
motherhood. It was actually things my husband did for me in my first month of postpartum
Mhm.
that helped take mental load off
Yes.
my plate, or so, it was something like that. And
Right.
one of the things that really struck controversy for a lot of people was the fact that Adam gave me time to play video games. A lot of people are really mad about that. And it made
Wow.
me question, should I be playing video games as a mom? And I asked Adam that question. He was like, why would you not? Because I have hobbies outside of being a mom. Nobody questions if I have hobbies, sorry, out of being a dad. Why would they
Yeah.
question
Right.
you having interests and hobbies outside of being a mom?
Thank
And it
you.
felt right. And I felt a lot of shame when it went viral because
Mm.
a lot of people were saying,
Mm.
oh, like video games, that's not it. Or, oh, why aren't you taking care of your kid? Or like these things. And I
Mm.
really had to reflect before replying to a lot of these people because
Yeah.
it made me question, am I doing the right thing? Am I doing the wrong thing? And I
Mm.
think I was encompassed in that journey of mom is my whole identity. So it made me feel a lot of guilt reading those comments, but it wasn't until I reflected and it made me realize, no, you know what? I can have an identity outside of it being a mom. Everyone can have an identity outside of being a parent. We deserve that because, again, when we pour into ourselves, when we make ourselves a priority, when we take care of ourselves and don't make parenthood our encompassing personality identity, we can show up as parents better.
Mm. Thank you for sharing this story. And I remember watching this moment happen for you via the internet and seeing you go viral. And we were, so proud of you. And we'll touch on this probably a little bit more as we reflect on the overarching theme at the end of our episode. But I mean, you are the embodiment of consistency in all of the different chapters of your
Thank
life and how
you.
you talk about since the beginning days of like showing up and blogging, and just being like giving yourself permission to just create in the ways that felt good and to experiment, but just being so consistent with it. And I remember like even when you started your first Growing Goddess page and when I was a beta client, even if it was a couple hundred followers, you gave it your all to educate, to document your journey and just to be of service to that little audience, no matter how many people were there. And then to have these moments where you're a new parent, like brand new parent, that then
Yeah.
went viral, and then with that virality, just have this door open when you're in your like most, I wouldn't say most vulnerable, but you're in this like very sacred transition in your life. You've just become a mother. You have this amazing partner and you want to share what he's done right and what he's done that was helpful for
Yeah.
you and for your new family. And it was a beautiful offering of generosity to share that tip, because I know that part of why that reel went viral is because of all the shares. People would see it and they would share it with their partner and they
Yeah.
would share it with whoever.
Yeah.
Um, but then to have, these comments come from whoever on the internet who thought that they had
Yeah.
a right to say something about it. Um,
Yeah.
and I just admire you and commend you, because even as you share this story back, you speak to your internal work that you did. And I think that internal work that you did in that moment is just a testament to all the internal work you've done up until the point that you went
Yeah.
viral, where you just spend the time to really get grounded in who you are, why you're showing up, who you're showing up for. And
Yeah.
even in that moment, like I think that like to be human is to have those thoughts that you had, and
Yeah.
to question and to look in the mirror and say, like, what am I hearing? How am I going to filter these
Yeah.
messages, and how am I going to make sense of it? So I think to have those thoughts and those doubts come up is just speaking to your humanity. But for you to be able to navigate that both internally and then also with the support of your partner, and just say, like, first of all, would anybody even be making these comments if I was a
Yeah.
father in this situation? So let's just
Yeah.
peel apart the patriarchy a little bit here,
Yeah.
and then say, like, these people don't know me. They don't know what I've been through. They don't know, like,
Yeah.
how hard of a journey it's been for me to get here, what this means to me, and how
Yeah.
amazing of a mother you are, how hands-on of a mother you are. And then what? To play video games for an hour a day to, like, decompress? Like, what if
Yeah.
you, I feel like if you had said that you were scrolling TikTok or Reels for an hour, it
Yeah.
wouldn't have gotten the same reaction. And
Then
everybody does that, right?
yeah,
Everybody's just on the,
exactly.
so, uh, yeah, it's just, I really appreciate that you share that story. And I'm also, as someone who hasn't gone viral and doesn't necessarily seek
Yeah.
virality, but I do, like, I'm very intentional about stepping into
Yeah.
visibility, because I know that I want to be
Yes.
findable to the people that need me. And
Yeah.
that can be an intention outside of
Absolutely.
virality, right? But
Absolutely.
that in either one of those moments, whether it's you're going viral or you're just allowing yourself to be
Yeah.
more visible, and spreading your voice and your message on platforms where people
Yeah.
can find you, that a core component to what you do is being grounded in yourself, knowing who
Yeah.
you are,
Oh
knowing
yeah.
your why, becoming unshakable, so
Yes.
that when we get these big reactions, it doesn't sway us or, cause
Yeah.
us to veer course from why we're showing up in the first place.
Absolutely. I think if I were to gone viral before I did any of the work, I would not have been
Mm.
able to take it, especially with my people pleaser tendencies that I had prior. I would have been like, oh my God, I need to delete this. Oh my God, I need to reply to all these people and
Mm.
validate why I'm doing this. And I think that's something that is really important too. You don't need to validate yourself to every single person on the internet. And
Yes.
that's part of the work,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Like that's your journey. You share what parts of your story and your journey that you want to share on the internet. And you don't need to affirm that to random people on the internet, right?
And the people who are going to, like, find the value in your story and that are going to be
Mm-hmm.
drawn to the help that you have to offer are going to find you, despite all of the
Yeah,
trolls, despite all the people who are
absolutely.
just showing up in their unhealed versions of themselves. So I say this with a
Yeah,
lot of compassion, because there's all these comments out there
absolutely.
and they can feel so hateful, but we're living in a
Mm-hmm.
society that's set up with so much disease and
Yeah,
disharmony and discord, and we just see that on the internet. But the internet can also be such a
yeah,
beautiful place of connection,
yeah.
and can be
Mm-hmm.
really aligned, almost like alternate universe to our real life work, and like our
Yeah,
face-to-face interactions with people, which you speak to so well. I think you really bridge that gap in such a beautiful way. You work in person with your clients, you also
yeah,
show up online so much. So I'm wondering if this is a good place to have you transition, because I know you have so much insight to offer into reflecting on our overarching theme this
yeah,
season, which is stories that reach. We've touched on it throughout both of your stories so far, but I'm asking each of my guests this season to reflect on what it means to share stories with a wider audience, to go outside of our
yeah,
intimate circles, and to put our stories and our experiences and our insights and knowledge out there for strangers to hear and be
yeah.
impacted from our stories. What has it meant for you, and what does it mean to anybody who's considering taking the same journey?
Sharing your story on the internet is very scary for a lot of people. I think a lot of people who are entering this space can agree to that. You have the choice of what you want to share, and you get to choose how that story is drawing in the right kind of people for your community. So
Mm-hmm.
if the people who aren't for you, your story doesn't
Mm-hmm.
matter to them, and
Yeah.
whatever they have to say shouldn't impact your ability to share your story.
Right.
Stories are here to connect, but at the same time, like I touched on earlier, so stories are a connecting factor, but also it's what makes you individual. It's what makes you
Yeah.
different, and because of that,
Yes.
you're able to reach the audience that you're trying to reach. While
Mm-hmm.
also weeding out the people that aren't for you, and that's okay.
Right.
Not everyone is going to be here for you, and those aren't your audience, and that's okay. I think when it comes to sharing your story on the internet, it's okay to push yourself out of that boundary and share the parts of you that you're willing to share. And when the right people find your content on the internet, they will, and they'll align with it, and those will be your people,
Yes,
if that makes sense.
absolutely. Yes, and that's been your experience. You've been able to fill
Yes,
your coaching business with people you've found through sharing your story
yes,
online, right?
yes,
So it's obviously been really impactful for you. What I wanted to ask one more question. I mean, you've been doing this for a
yeah,
while now. What kept you
yeah,
going in those early days when maybe, the numbers weren't so big and the reach wasn't
yeah,
so far? What kept you going, even if, it seemed like nobody was actually seeing what you were putting out there
yes.
at some point?
It's funny because a lot of people don't know that when I first started, what I was really seeking was community, feeling like I
Yes.
was part of something, if you will.
Yes.
When I first started, and a lot of people don't know this, I started as a geek blogger who would review Pretty Little Liars episodes on the internet. Every single time there was a new episode, I would review it on the internet, and then I would
Wow.
post to this forum of other geek girl bloggers, and we would talk about it. And
Hmm.
because of that, we kind of built like this small little niche community, and I'm
Yes.
still friends with many of them many years later.
Wow.
I think I think what motivated me to keep pushing through this was making friends,
Yes.
finding a community who ended up feeling like friends. I think a lot of the
Yes.
time within the space of entrepreneurship and trying to gain reach and gain visibility, people search for numbers more than they start
Yeah.
searching for people. And
Yes.
that's where it gets really hard to stay consistent. If you're just searching for your next 1,000 followers, your next 10,000 followers, or whatever that looks like, or 100 likes on your post, it's really hard to get affirmation from that because
Yeah.
the algorithm's constantly changing, the internet's constantly changing, and because of that, that's not really sustainable for a lot of people. What's
Hmm.
helped me stay consistent through all these years was the small amount of people that I ended up meeting and connecting with on the internet.
Yes.
And because we had so many similarities and so many common interests, because again, I was connecting with my people, the people who
Yes.
resonated with my story, I ended
Right.
up being kind of like internet friends with them. Now, 10 years later, almost, I'm still connected with a lot of these people as my life has shifted and changed and my
Right.
businesses have shifted and changed. A lot of these people stayed connected to me because they were
Hmm.
here for me, not just because they wanted to learn about Pretty Little Liars or dog food or dog brands or
Yeah.
fitness. They're here because
Yes.
they resonated with some part of my story and wanted to
Yeah.
continue hearing that story and what that
Mm.
story evolved and changed into. And I think if anybody's out there looking to share their story, remember that there are people who do want to hear your story and connect to it and are here for you, not just the information you share on the internet. It's that connection of the two, the bridging of the two of what creates
Yeah.
community on the internet.
Oh my gosh, you couldn't have said that more perfectly. You're such a girl after my heart, and I just appreciate that you have the story to share that insight with people. And it started when you were so young, and you've been able to carry that story of building community in such a small, unique way. But it ties in. I was just having this conversation this morning with some women that I'm in a coaching group with who are trying to build their businesses and who are feeling discouraged about reaching an audience. That's exactly what I said to them. I said is no matter how many people you have following you or how many people the algorithm tells you your content is reaching, if you focus on the handful that are in front of you and build
Yeah.
real life relationships with them and grow from there, these people are going to become invested in you, right? And
Right.
they
Yeah.
will want to follow you. You just said that in your story. Like literally you pivoted
Yeah.
from Pretty Little Liars to dog brands to coaching, right? Fitness and nutrition coaching to motherhood, which is not as much big of a jump. But if we start from Pretty Little Liars or dog brands, you've made a pretty significant jump in your series of businesses, and you have people who are still invested in you. And that's
Yeah.
exactly the point
Yeah.
that I was making. And whereas not everybody's going to be a customer for dog brands if they don't own a dog, right? They might
Yeah.
still be sharing your content or cheering you on or making referrals.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, it brings humanity and it brings meaning to everything that we do, starting with that self-validation, but then really easily getting that affirmation from those who are connected to us and who have chosen to build community with us in a way that algorithm numbers can never affirm us or never give to us,
100%.
right? Yeah. So thank you for sharing that.
Absolutely.
That's so powerful. And I hope that whoever's listening, if you're embarking on a similar journey or you've been on a similar journey, I hope that this, supports your moves for your next step forward, and encourages you, because I think any of us who have tried know that can feel
Yeah.
overwhelming or exhausting sometimes.
Yeah.
But when you're focused on the right thing, it really is a joy. It becomes effortless, right?
Absolutely agree.
And for anyone listening, I want to make sure that they can find you, Jen, because I'm sure that there's going to be
Yeah.
people who are interested in seeing the amazing work that you're doing. Can you share where we can find you and support your work or get connected to you?
Yep. So I'm very active on Instagram at growinggoddess.ca, but I'm also, if you want to learn more about healthy recipes, or I have coaching tips, and I also have a link to my coaching at www.growinggoddess.ca.
Perfect. And we will drop those links in the show notes below so that if anyone is curious, you have done an amazing job of making your services so accessible. Like, I just love your mission. And you
Thank
serve
you.
women. Do you specifically serve women on their prenatal and postnatal journeys now, or do you still serve all women?
I serve all women, but lately it's just been pre and postnatal clients who've been reaching out because I guess, again, in that space. So now every woman
Yes.
reaches out. Part of the journey, right?
Yes, absolutely. People are finding you because you're aligned. Your work is aligning with where they're at in their journey. That's such a beautiful
Yes.
thing. Awesome. Thank you so much for being here today. I have
Thank
just
you.
enjoyed hearing your stories that you brought to the campfire. You are such an inspiration, and I just love watching you grow, watching your story unfold, watching your family grow. That's something we didn't touch enough on, but if you want to see more of the amazing family stories that Jen shares, please follow her on her Instagram, because her and her partner, you two are such an inspiration to me. Even though you're younger than me and Michael, I feel like I look up to you and your relationship so much. I've learned so much
Thank
from you.
you.
So anybody that follows you will get so much inspiration and feel the love that you have cultivated with between the two of you, and now starting your family. It's such a gift to the world.
Thank you so much for having me.
You are so welcome. Thanks everyone for being here for another episode of Everyone Needs a Story for the Campfire. We can't wait to bring more stories and insights to your ears and living rooms and however you consume your media. We will be back next episode with more stories with our next guest. Thank you for being here. Bye.
Bye.
I'm so moved by Jen's story. She's an inspiration in following one's unique path and committing to growth, healing, and service. If you want to stay connected to Jen, please check out the links below. I'll see you here next time at the campfire with more stories, insights, and shared exploration of what it means to be a human.